Greetings, my fellow scholars of the livestream! I'm Yuzuazat from the Cosmo Canyon Observatory, and in today's analysis, we're taking a close look at many more screenshots that got released on November 25th. However, we'll only cover those which contain characters, scenes, or locations we've already covered in past game analysis episodes and save others for later ones, such as Reno, Root, and Aerith's home. But before we start, I have a quick announcement to make. Becoming a member on my YouTube channel is now possible. Click the join button below any of my videos to become a member and get some neat perks. They are the same as on Patreon and Subscribestar, only missing the higher tiers above Nanaki. At least for the time being. So if you'd like to support my work directly on YouTube, you're now able to do so. Alright, with that out of the way, let's check out some screenshots. First, I need to throw in a little addendum to the last episode of Game Analysis, where we covered the weapon upgrade screens. Neox from our Discord server had a great idea what those gauges underneath the Buster Sword icons could be. My initial assumption was that they're representing the weapon level. However, I think his version is the correct one, which is proficiency. This would also explain why the gauge underneath the Buster Sword icon is missing, because we've already maxed it out and learned it permanently. The other weapons haven't been used yet, so their proficiency is still at 0. This would also reinforce my idea of every weapon having only one ability to learn. The second point relates to the rank. This could also stand for currently equipped weapon. Since there's no other indicator for which weapon is currently equipped, I think he's correct. Although I find it curious why they're using a C instead of an E for equipped. But does it really matter? And the third and last thing I need to mention is something Azeroth189 mentioned in a comment on the last video, which was a detail I've missed in the preview window. Shame on me. If we compare the ability preview with the E3 2019 gameplay presentation and the State of Play trailer, we see that they switched things around again. In the State of Play trailer, there was no fence seen on the left. And then in the E3 2019 gameplay presentation, this whole area to the left has been covered by this fence here. And there's even more stuff lying around. Lo and behold, they removed this again here for the ability preview, which I find pretty strange. The State of Play trailer and the ability preview also have the same brick wall on the train station building, whereas in the E3 2019 gameplay presentation, it seems to consist of concrete. And if we look at the individual objects lying around, we can see they're practically the same. This tarped and strapped object can be seen in both screenshots, as well as the ones behind it in the corner, the parts of the wooden pallet below, and the stack of blue crates behind. Though it seems like the exact positioning has been changed. With all that being said, I don't think they changed it back to the State of Play trailer version, but rather didn't update the ability preview, which shows still an old version of this area. And one more thing. Remember how I pointed out this pattern in the background? I completely forgot to mention that it's also visible on the title screen of the playable demo. It's very subtle, however, but the fact that it's still there, on the title screen no less, I believe this pattern is very important to one of the themes of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which ultimately relates to Genova cells. Alright, that's it for the addendum. Moving on! Alright, let's now take a quick look at the enemy assessment UI. The PlayStation blog entry has the following description of the screenshot. Assess. Materia that allows you to use the Assess ability. When you use Assess on an enemy, you can see their resistances and weaknesses, making it easier to defeat them in battle. This essentially means that the Sense materia is now called Assess materia, with the command also having changed from Sense to Assess. For the record, we will only focus on the UI in this video, as the whole background will be covered when analyzing the second bombing mission. Here, Barrett has previously analyzed the Grashtrike, as seen at the top in the left element, which also has this nice targeting reticle in the top left corner. Then there's the Assess symbol and the name, current and max HP, complete with the percentage bar, which also reveals the Grashtrike's HP, which is 1660. However, there's no level displayed. Do they even have levels in the Final Fantasy VII Remake? Or do they have dynamic levels, depending on the character's levels and the chance? Or is it just hidden? Anyway, below we see the white text explaining their nature and yellow text containing tips for combat. Here it says, large bugs, referring to the Grashtrike, that like dark confined spaces, usually encountered in tunnels and the plate interior. They spew sticky threads from their mouth parts and ensnare their prey, which is exactly what they did in the original, which caused slow. And for combat tips it says, Ice attacks rapidly fill their stagger gauge. They protect themselves with barrier when on low health or isolated. And this one is new. It's quite interesting. So they're harder to kill when only one is left. I hope it's a barrier we can dispel. And further down we have the rewards, which are exactly the same as in the original. EXP, AP and Gil. EXP are of course experience points, AP ability points for growing materia, Gil is the currency. The values are also quite different compared to the original, where it rewarded the player with 20 XP, 2 AP and 20 Gil, compared to the 58 AXP, 3 AP and 34 Gil here. But I don't think comparing numbers is in any way helpful, as the balancing will be completely different in the remake. Next up we have items dropped and stealable items. In the original, we could only obtain and steal spiderwebs, so the dropped high potion is a plus here. And if the content of this window is too large, we can scroll with L, though I think scrolling is only restricted to the text. Could be everything though, because there could also be more items dropped and more items to steal. We'll see. Then there's also the L1 button, which probably opens a window with all available icons, mostly comprised of element and ailment icons I presume. On the right side we see the rest of the data. Most importantly the resistances. As stated in the text, Grashtrike is weak to ice. Which is new because in the original game, Grashtrikes don't have any weaknesses and resistances for that matter. What's also interesting is that they separate lesser and greater resistances. Are those referring to fixed percentage values or just value ranges? Could be that everything between 100 and 50% are considered lesser resistances, and everything below 50% is considered greater resistance. With percent of course referring to what the damage is reduced to. Then there are immunities and absorbed elements. It's important to note that absorbed elements specifically includes elements, which means lesser resistances, greater resistances and immunities contain elements and ailments, while only elements can be absorbed. So it's curious that they mention status ailments specifically and not just weaknesses for both. Now, what's completely new is the battle log. It shows us the number of how many times we defeated this enemy, and also if we already have assessed it or staggered it, without any number. Though I find it interesting that assessed is even in here. Can we open this window even if the enemy isn't assessed and it just shows dashes and question marks? I think this entry is kind of redundant. Unless it works like in Final Fantasy XIII, where we automatically uncover info when hitting weaknesses, resistances, or just defeat the enemy and get items and steal items, and when specifically using Libra, it unveils most of the information at once. So either we use assess to completely assess an enemy and get the entry here, or you fight it so many times that we know the rewards, had all items dropped, have stealed all items, and hit all weaknesses and resistances. Now, the R1 button seems to toggle data. What other data could there be? Maybe it also shows all abilities this enemy can perform, and locations where it can appear in. That would be nice, especially for the bestiary, which makes it easy to grind out some items by just searching for the enemy with the item we want, check the location, go there and farm. Now, how was this window even opened? Since Barret is shooting at the enemy, there's either a dedicated button to open this window at any time, or when using the assess command, it stays up there until we hit cancel. I think this makes the most sense as we do see a different targeting reticle on the enemy. Are we able to switch between enemies by using R2 and L2? If there is a dedicated button to call this assessment window at will, the only one I can think of is L3, since there's no sprint functionality in battle. We've already covered the options menu, but only in Japanese, and I had to rely on a translator. If you'd like to catch up on that, I've covered this extensively in Game Analysis episode 15. What I like about the English version of the screenshot is its more vibrant blue hue. It has become quite beautiful. There are still a few things I'd like to say about the English version. Let's check out the description of the classic difficulty. The player-controlled character will attack and defend automatically, allowing you to focus on executing commands. The battle difficulty is the same as easy, which is very interesting. I think it's probably because of the inefficiency of the AI while fighting to fill up the ATB. The normal difficulty probably has proven to be too frustrating. I really hope normal difficulty poses at least some level of challenge. There is also an additional thought I had about the chat log. What if this refers to passerby NPC dialogue, as in those happening when you walk by NPCs? They also changed the menu background a little bit. We now see an additional blue grid and more stars in the corners. Alright, let's now check out the background. we're looking at the same corner already visible in the E3 2019 gameplay demonstration. We can see the same ads, the same vertical protrusion of the wall, as well as the train network and the departure table. And on the floor, we see a familiar mosaic-like pattern. In the same gameplay presentation video, we already got a good look at it. In this example, however, the camera is just turned around by 180 degrees. But other than that, it's the exact same spot. Okay, this concludes the options menu. Let's move on to the next one. Beautiful badass Bigs. Different from other screenshots, this is a frame we've already seen in the TGS 2019 trailer. Biggs has seen some improvements in this version. We see more details on the hair, he has much higher resolution textures, there's even a 3D mesh improvement on his neck and shoulder, and much better shadow quality. And that's about everything I can say about this picture. Moving on to our beautiful chubby Wedge. And I'm not exaggerating, he now even has a pretty boy's face. Almost a little too uncanny. However, he now also exhibits manly body hair. Nice one, Wedge. And the details on his gun are phenomenal. It's a huge thing. I think it might be a Shinra issue due to the triple dots at the rear. Now let's have a look at the difference to earlier versions. While the details on his body and outfit don't seem to have changed much, the difference in facial features are huge. Especially when looking at cheek and cheekbones. While he looked almost comically chubby in the PSX 2015 trailer, he now possesses higher cheekbones, as well as a little less pear-shaped head. They also made his eyebrows thinner, and therefore also prettier. So I'm not sure if I like this change. It makes him look almost too good. When we switch our attention to the background, we can see that it's the same one as in the TGS 2019 trailer, where we saw Ifrit performing his Hellfire attack onto the sweeper. There are a few markers that prove this. First of all, we see the same forklift in both screenshots. And the whole background is also the same, as seen with the ramp, the stripe on the building, and the container covered with a blue tarp in the back. And these findings are more evidence towards my theory of this area being the side mission with Avalanche, which I've covered extensively in Game Analysis episode 16. Speaking of, the two screenshots with the Jacopo and Moogle summon provide us with a better view on the same area. Keep in mind that we only focus on the background here, as we'll cover all the summons in a different video. As we can see here, these are the same buildings in both screenshots. Markers here on screen should be proof enough. The truck is also still there as seen above the arrow. And the enemy we're fighting is also still a sweeper. Though I'm not sure if we already have Ifrit and Jacopo and Moogle at this point in time, as this is the first mission after the initial bombing run. And I'm pretty sure we'll receive one of those two in this mission alone. Not both. And I'm kind of leaning towards Jacopo and Moogle. And then we get Ifrit at a later point in time. And the comparison to the Wedge screenshot is even more proof that this is indeed the same area. Again, just look at the forklift and the area behind. The most interesting part of this screenshot is that we have now a better view on the buildings in the background. As mentioned in Game Analysis episode 16, we're probably looking towards Sector 8. And since the buildings are now more detailed in the screenshot, I'm pretty sure we're looking at those two buildings seen in the Midgar overview shot. And there's even more evidence which makes this plausible. With my prediction of this Shinra facility sitting on the outer plate border, the escape by parachute makes a lot of sense. We start over there and fly all the way to the gap between the plates, which is where they seem to be coming from, as we're flying right through Sector 8 and right into Sector 7. In the lower left of the screenshot, we can see some letters which probably spell out speed limit. Not sure what the speed limit is, but I'm sure it will be specified outside of the view here. Let's now have a look at the second Jacopo Moogle screenshot. As with the previous one, we've also already seen this part of this area. Namely here in this shot where Ifrit is preparing Hellfire. It was quite blurry then, but now we have a very crisp representation of this area. And if you don't believe me that it's the same, let me show you. Same 3-story building, same window array, same floodlight array with 14 units, the pipe running out and downwards, as well as the container covered in tarp at the top. And thanks to the different angle, I've noticed two interesting details. First of all, the area behind the pylons does look like an entrance or an exit, whichever one it might end up being. And to the left, we see that the ramp to the second floor is blocked, and there's even a destructible Shinra crate lying around. Alright, that's it for the Jacopo Moogle screenshots. Moving on to the next one. This right here is the best depiction we've got of Jessie so far. Really beautiful in-game rendering. But let's focus on the background first. It shows practically the same part of Seventh Heaven as seen in the E3 2019 trailer, where Cloud is sipping on his drink. The important elements are still the same, and we finally get a better view on the neon sign behind Cloud's hair. Regarding the neon sign, we can even make out what it says, namely, Games. And it's also situated right above the dartboard, which we can see just quite a little bit underneath, and the blurry version of the scoreboard can also be seen. More on that later. Furthermore, we see curtains. Makes the Seventh Heaven just a little bit cozier. And we also get a better view on the table and chairs, or stools if you prefer. It's a round table with a light brown wooden surface, standing on a single leg in the middle, and the two stools seem to be the same model as we see at the bar. One of them looks kinda brown, though I think this is just due to the lighting. Let's now compare this version of Jessie to the earlier iterations. At the surface, she looks pretty much the same, but when looking closer, there are a few differences. First of them are the eyebrows, which look a bit thinner and sexier than the State of Play version of her. The eyes also got a slight overhaul. The color of the iris are much more saturated, and the light reflection much more pronounced. Hence the black eyeliner also got reduced, or replaced with a reddish one. It could also be her natural eyelid border color. Next up is the jawline, which has been made a little bit stronger it seems. While the State of Play trailer showed her in a V-shaped face form, the newer iterations, especially the November screenshot one, make her face look a little bit more rounded, which I very much like. And here we have two more versions of her. The more recent TGS 2019 version, as well as the very first PSX iteration, which is around 4 years old by now. The eyeliner strength difference is visible here as well, which seems to have been a pretty recent change. When looking at her PSX 2015 model, we see that she's been through quite a lot of changes, especially the eyebrows and the chin. The former were thinner, shorter and straight, and also angled more upward, while the latter was pointier, sharper, and looked generally a little less human. And what's interesting about her hairstyle is that it didn't really change much, as we can even see some mesh similarities. Although the texture quality has been vastly improved, and the color has also changed quite a few times. In the PSX trailer it was more like a mixture between maroon and ginger, while in the TGS 2019 version and other versions as well, they opted for a dark brown color, whereas in the November screenshot they returned to a more maroon tint, which is what I prefer out of all the iterations so far. When comparing her bandana, we can see that the TGS 2019 and the November screenshot have the exact same texture, whereas the PSX 2015 version differs quite a bit. Alright, that's it for Jessie. However, I'm wondering what she's saying here. I'm pretty sure she's talking to Cloud, but the context is just anyone's guess. When thinking about it a little bit, I came up with two possible lines. Just a small little errand, we'll be back in no time. Or, don't go all mopey on me now, told you I'm the Dart Master. I guess we'll have to wait until March 3rd and listen for ourselves. And now it's time for some darts. Unlike in the TGS 2019 trailer, we now have confirmation that the games corner is indeed next to the window, as seen by the curtain and the daylight shining inside. Which leads me to believe that this minigame isn't available until Cloud has slept for the night after the first bombing mission has concluded. And behind Cloud's hand, we can see the dart ranking board, which I've already mentioned in the previous screenshot. Besides being next to the dartboard, it also directly says Darts Ranking. It's quite blurry, but it's pretty clear it says Darts Ranking. Now let's have a closer look at Cloud's hand and dart. When comparing it to the TGS 2019 footage, we can make out the same symbol here, just way more clear and crisp. And the other details of the dart itself are also phenomenal, almost lifelike, just like Cloud's glove and bracelet. Texture work is really something else in this game. And when we compare Cloud's in-game model to the pre-rendered one, we do see some differences, but all in all, it's a really well-made in-game representation, which doesn't lose too much details. Especially when looking at Cloud's arm. Next to some bone and muscle structure, we can even see some veins near the armpits and some irregularities on the skin near the elbow, which we usually don't see in in-game models. Alright, up next is the dartboard itself, which has me really pumped for this minigame. When comparing it to the TGS 2019 trailer again, we see that it's still the exact same layout, just with crisper wood panels and much better lighting. In the top right corner, the familiar tutorial pop-up makes its appearance again, with one difference however. When comparing it to previous footage, we notice that the button layout has changed a little. Instead of the options button, we can just press the touchpad button to view it again. Can't really say which one is better, but I assume they opted for a global pause option and permanently mapped it to the options button. Speaking of buttons, the controls are pretty straightforward. Just use the left analog stick to aim and a single press on circle to throw it, press X to quit. The last one especially is a great choice because it lets you quit at any time you want. No need to go through a whole game you've already screwed up in the first rounds. What bums me out a little bit is the quite low resolution of some textures here. Namely the shadow of the corner piece in the top left corner and the numbers around the dartboard itself. In this instance, Cloud has already thrown 2 darts, which is also represented in the top left corner, with 2 darts being emptied and the third one still there. And why do I believe the 20-point dart was thrown first? Simple. The number 9 is shown next to the score, which is also where the second dart is stuck into. But how are we able to have a score of 272 in round 1? Let me introduce you to one of the rules of darts, which is the 301 scoring method, which constitutes that the number for each dart thrown will get subtracted from the score, with the goal to hit exactly 0 eventually. However, there's the caveat. If you go below 0 in one round, the score resets to where it was before this round, which presents an additional challenge at the end and doesn't guarantee the one player to win, which brought down the score faster, which is quite interesting. But regarding ranking, is the goal just to finish with as few rounds as possible? As the UI stands now, I don't think there's competition involved. Unless they introduce an online scoreboard, which would also be kinda neat. But after all this talk about rules, let's put them into practice. We start at 301, hit a 20, and then a 9, which, after subtracting them, results into 272, as seen above. So it checks out. It's difficult to make out, but we do see Cloud's hand and dart in the lower right corner, which does add to the immersion. And if we hit throw, we probably see a neat animation where Cloud throws the dart forward and into the targeting reticle, which is what we'll be looking at right now. It's comprised of 3 elements. The inner hit area, which is where we want the dart to get thrown into, a timer represented by a shrinking circle, enveloped by a big outer area, which, according to its rotation position, is most likely slowly rotating and maybe sways around a little, make it more difficult to hit what you want to hit, which has us countersteer with the left analog stick, further increasing the difficulty. What if we can level up to reduce the strength of the sway and the size of the hit areas? While I think it would be cool, it would also diminish the challenge over time, so I don't think there will be dart levels, just scores. And there's one detail I really like. The holes! Which are scattered all over the dartboard. But what I'm wondering, are they just static or even dynamic? I'm pretty sure there are some static ones and dynamic ones appearing when we shoot darts into the board. It would feel weird not seeing where we shot at. But are those holes persistent across games? I don't think so. Because after several dozens of games, it would look worse, worse and worse. So I think the dynamic holes will disappear after finishing the game. Alright, that's about it for the dartboard. On to the next minigame! Bike chase minigame looks better and better with each iteration we get to see. There are already a bunch of new details on display here. But let's start with the background. Generally, it looks exactly the same, down to the lighting, except for the red lights on the walls, which shine much more brightly and more vibrant, and therefore provide a better balance to the green on the right. The blue light from the signal makes the color scheme all the more interesting. Now, let's check out the first of the new details. Do you see it? Exactly. Different enemy, different vehicle. In the November 2019 screenshot, our current enemy is a simple security officer. Next to the outfit, which is still the same, there are 2 things I want to point out. For one, there's the guard plate on the back, and the MTLAs usually holding the baton in place, which leads me to believe that they don't have any attack in their repertoire. Unless they also throw grenades, but we'll see. The one from the E3 2019 trailer is a black and red version of the security officer, which doesn't have an official name yet, so I'll just call it Elite Unit. We can also see the same type of enemy in the TGS 2019 trailer next to Reno and 2 other security officers. Let's now have a look at the vehicles. I've already talked about the E3 version, while the Elite Unit rides a futuristic-looking bike taken from the discontinued mobile game Final Fantasy VII G-Bike. The new enemy from the screenshot rides a bike very reminiscent to the one used by the New York Police Department. It has practically the same windshield, a similar siren light stuck on a pole, and a cargo box on either side. And those are just a few examples of all the other similarities. Of course, it's not exactly the same, or else it wouldn't quite fit into the world of Final Fantasy VII. And the Shinra vehicle wouldn't be complete without the logo, which has to be printed onto anything they produce. Let's make some predictions about the enemies. The security officer on the left is most likely the very first enemy encountered in this minigame, which rides a standard Midgar police bike. In terms of gameplay, this one is less menacing, and its attacks might only consist of ramming. And the elite unit on the right will most likely be the second enemy encountered, which is riding on a combat bike and throws grenades, as we've seen in the E3 2019 trailer. And I also predict they only appear in the second half of this first appearance of this minigame, after the cutscene shown in the E3 2019 trailer. And I also think their behavior is much more aggressive. Alright, let's have a look at the UI. We still don't see the normal attack button, but we're currently attacking the enemy with Cloud's standard sword swings, which cause the enemy to flinch a little, as seen with the tilted head. And like in the original game, I assume we attack to the left with square, and to the right with circle. I wonder if X will be of any use. And I'm also wondering what spinning slash does. Does Cloud swing around his sword 360 degrees around the bike, performing an area of effect attack? I can't see how Jessie could dodge this. The first new element of the UI is the long range button. It seems we're able to hold down L1 to perform long range attacks, which either tell Jessie to shoot or command Biggs to shoot. But since the long range button is disabled during Cloud's attacks, I think it will be Jessie doing the shooting, while Biggs will attack on his own accord. And why hold L1? Jessie has her gun still tucked away on her back, so she will only aim while holding down L1. Which makes sense because she needs both hands available while Cloud is swinging his sword, one to hold on and the other one to counterbalance. And on the right side, we have the HP bars, which now show the name of the motorcycles we're riding. It's pretty cool. And during the Midgar escape, it will say Hardy Daytona on Cloud's element. Wedge's HP bar is the new addition here, as it wasn't visible in the E3 2019 trailer. I already predicted this to be the case, so I'm glad they actually show the HP separately. And we can also see that Wedge's HP are a little lower than Cloud's, though the AI is definitely not as good as it seems. And comparing the HP gauges with the original game, it looks like the HP represents the motorcycle instead of the characters. Which kind of makes sense, to be honest. Although this could change for the escape sequence, as the lost HP in the bike minigame translated to lost HP for the next boss battle, which I find was a nice little detail. Speaking of nice little details, there's the occasional flame exiting the exhaust, leaving a little smoke residue afterwards. Alright, let's make some more predictions. As the bike names are explicitly displayed here, I assume we receive access to many more bikes, which we can choose from depending on the mission. And I also think there will be optional rewards for clearing missions. And maybe there's even a simple bike tuning and upgrading system involved, just like for the weapons. Unlockable optional missions will most likely also exist, as well as several challenges, like time attack, defeat all foes, no damage runs, etc. This is also a great opportunity to introduce online leaderboards, just like for the Dart minigame. Maybe they'll do it. And different missions most likely have other characters on board, especially since Jessie, Biggs and Wedge won't be around during the latter part of the game. So maybe Cloud and Tifa on one bike and Barret on the other. Not sure about Aerith, unless she can place both legs on one side, but this probably wouldn't work on a bike. And this is probably not a surprise, but I think the Hardy Daytona will be the ultimate bike, unless they create something even better. Alright, that's it for the bike chase minigame. I'm seriously looking forward to playing this. This is gonna be dope. This next screenshot here, where we see Cloud using focus thrust to stagger a sweeper, is something we don't need to analyze anymore. We've already covered this area extensively in Game Analysis Episode 8, and the stagger mechanic was also included in Game Analysis Episode 9. And what's more, this exact screenshot was also part of the TGS batch of screenshots, which were released 2 months earlier, and I'm not sure why they included it again. Maybe it was just by mistake. Who knows? Anyway, please check out Game Analysis Episodes 8 and 9 for all the elements included in this screenshot. The next one also doesn't really show anything new, but there are still a few points worth of note. Here, Cloud is in the middle of using the Punisher mode combo attack, which is a fiercer and longer version of his standard attack combo, also having a longer range. Punisher mode is activated by pressing triangle, which highlights the whole button area, changing the command to operator mode, giving us the opportunity to change back at any time. And here's how the full combo looks like. Seven sword swings, with the last one causing a triple hit. And when looking at the background, it looks quite familiar. In this still shot from the Symphonic Reunion trailer, where Cloud performs his cross/limit break on another security officer, we see the exact same elements in the background. Some movable objects are situated a little bit differently, but the rest of the background is exactly the same. And in case you don't quite remember where it's situated in the original game, I explained in Game Analysis episode 8 that we're currently in this room between the two security doors, looking towards the northwest corner. That's about everything of interest I can say about this screenshot. Moving on to the last one. And here, we finally have a high-definition version of the 2 short clips posted on the official Final Fantasy VII Remake Twitter account. We've already covered this extensively in the live analysis of those 2 clips, which I've also uploaded as 2 separate videos. And thanks to the improved quality, we now have a better look on the ramp, the wooden pallets, and the forklift on the left, getting ready to transport those 3 iron crates. And in case you haven't watched those 2 livestream excerpts yet, and also didn't see my Twitter post about this, let me show you again where I think this area is located. Keeping all the other analysis in mind, close to the door leading to the T-junction, while looking back to where we came from. I'm pretty sure the reason why they chose this specific frame for this screenshot is to show off the particle effects when hitting an enemy, as well as the motion blur caused by the Buster Sword cutting the air. And I have to admit, those look really nice. Good job, Square Enix! And before we end this video, let me provide you with a little bonus analysis. This here is an upscaled teaser screenshot which Square Enix provided us with in anticipation of Jump Festa, which will take place on the 21st and 22nd of December. Most of you guys have probably already seen the comparison on the web, but here you get the full dose of analysis. Here we go. For reference, this is how it looked in the TGS 2019 trailer. And when we start switching between them, several changes become apparent. Most of all, the lighting. The TGS version of this sequence had a very annoying green tint all over the place. But here, the pinkish screen tone remains. At the same time, the green lighting from the left is even more pronounced, which creates a very nice contrast. Even though the face details are exactly the same, it looks very different. But that's also because of another detail I will show you later. In addition of the lighting, there's also much more details visible on the skin. The textures show way more details and look way less washed out than the TGS 2019 trailer. And the lights in the background actually illuminate the walls. This was completely missing in the TGS 2019 trailer. When we look at the hair, we see way more changes. Besides the obvious animation and positioning changes, there are also more strands visible, the bangs provide a much better frame for the face, and the more pronounced shadows give off a way more badass and menacing vibe. And to top it off, Cloud's Mako eyes are as intense as ever. They also reduce the blur in the background, using a less strong depth of field effect. Another big change is Cloud's arm. He buffed himself up quite a bit in the last 3 months, eh? Most affected is the shoulder muscle and the triceps. And the elbow has also been reduced a little bit. And lastly, they fixed the suspender. The clipping in the TGS 2019 trailer was very egregious, and I'm glad they fixed this. In addition, the suspenders aren't as loose anymore as in the TGS 2019 trailer, wrapping him tightly to his chest. Looking at it again without all the circles and arrows, we see how subtle adjustments can change so much. And now let's throw in the PSX 2015 version into the mix. Ah, this is huge! Just comparing it to the latest iteration, there are worlds in between. While certain elements are the same, the Jump Festa teaser image shows a real Cloud instead of whatever this is. I'm so glad they went the extra mile to iterate and iterate and iterate again and again on Cloud's design. Has been quite a journey. And with this glimpse on Cloud's latest design iteration and the game's phenomenal lighting also ends our analysis for today. Please let us know if there are details we've missed, and please don't hesitate to speak your mind. Let's have a discussion in the comments and on Discord. Invitation links in the description below. Leave a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell button to be notified of future uploads, and don't let yourself stop from sharing this video around. That being said, thank you so much for attending this analysis, and I hope to see you again in the next episode of Game Analysis. And always remember, stay safe and take care. Zuazat, signing off.